So yes, as mentioned, the session today is about empowering hospitality, leading the way of crafting diverse, inclusive, and brand lifestyles in transforming human experiences. We have Pascal Donat, who is, just a second to introduce him, he is 2 generations hospitality. He has more than 10 hotels in France, expanding globally and also regionally in Saudi Arabia and beyond. And most recently, he had developed a new brand called Elle Maison with international collaborators and partnerships. And then we have Gaurav Sinha, who is the CEO of Insignia Worldwide, which is a destination development and experience company that caters to some of these giga projects, such as Dubai Holding, Red Sea Development, PIF, Ministry of Culture, and hospitality brands such as Four Seasons, One and Only, and the list goes on. So if I was to say all of them, we'd probably stay here for an hour. So just a little bit about the session's details. We really want to focus on sharing the latest trends, insights that we can share, and how we can better develop transformative experiences and marketing and brand development. So whether you're elevating your brand's presence or enriching your guest experience or fostering inclusivity, the panel aims to provide hospitality brands with the insights and inspiration that takes us to latest, forward, and the current trends. So the first question is going to be to Pascal, and tell us a little bit more about Maison Elle. It's a recent project of yours, and what does this brand do to promote inclusivity? And especially since the brand also focuses on inclusivity for women.
Okay. Well, Maison Elle can you hear me? Yes, yes. So Maison Elle is a very old story. I bought a hotel a few years ago, and I was looking for a brand for it. And as I was driving, on the passenger seat, there was a Elle magazine issue. And I said to myself, well, what if Elle was a hotel brand? And then I immediately realized the potential of this brand in the hospitality. Because when you see those 4 magic letters, immediately comes to your mind all the covers you've seen, all the articles you've read, related to style, to beauty, to decoration, and so on. So I said, I was convinced of this potential, and I met people of Lagardère who owned the brand Elle, and I convinced them to come to the hospitality business. People don't know that Elle brand is worldwide famous. You have every year $500 million of product sold under the Elle licensing. And they have 1,200 point of sales. I bought a suit at Maison at Elle Men shop in Shanghai, for example. And so it's a very popular and very famous brand worldwide. So I created the first brand with Elle Hospitality that is called Maison Elle, and I opened the first Maison Elle in Paris 1.5 years ago. And we have already a franchisee in Amsterdam that opened its doors 6 months ago. When it's come to women empowerment, and that was your question, of course, I mean, Elle is synonym to women empowerment, because since 1945, since the magazine have been created, Elle has always been with the woman. They wrote for the woman, about the woman, and their history. So it's really strongly related to the woman history. And when I took the brand into hospitality, I realized something pretty interesting. Most classical brands have been designed by men for men, or I should say for businessmen, you see. And when you do this, you in fact ignore 50% of the population. So I tried to design hotels having in mind how can I meet the woman expectation as I designed the hotel. And it's a very interesting exercise, and that's what brought me to design the Maison Elle we have in Paris and the future Maison Elle we'll have in the world.
Thank you so much. Also, we read some recent reports of consumer purchasing powers of women with Nielsen, with Pascal the other day, so it was very impressive numbers. Okay, so the second question is to Gaurav. Tell us a little bit more about Insignia Worldwide and how it caters to really transforming human experiences. Can you give us an example of one of your recent projects based in the region.
Thank you, Yasmine. It's a pleasure to be here. Insignia is a category-defining design and strategy consultancy. We sit at the intersections of strategy and storytelling. And, our proposition is all about the human centricity of an experience. So it's not about the physical space alone, it's also understanding the ontological makeup of a place. So we at Insignia challenge what is humanly possible to conceive what is actually impossibly human. So that's at the heart of what we try and do as an organization. We were born in luxury hotels. We've got about 200 odd hotels in 20 countries that we've consulted with. We've worked in Beverly Hills or the Blue Mountains in Sydney and everything in between. A lot of work in the Indian Ocean. And for me, when people say, what is hospitality? I say hospitality is the front line of cultural diplomacy for a nation. How hospitable you are as a country can position you on the world stage. It can impact your GDP. It can shift the way people think about your culture. So, in many ways, hoteliers are cultural diplomats, in many ways, and you have to understand what are those aspirational needs from a human-centric perspective. As we speak, Insignia is authoring the national strategy for the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia on the visitor experience at the Saudi Pavilion at the Osaka Expo in 2025. And I think hoteliers can learn a lot by looking over the fence. So instead of looking at just other hospitality brands' experience propositions alone, I think hoteliers can learn a lot more by looking at how museums cater their service proposition, how theater and shows operate and deliver experiences. And like that, the list goes on. There are many components. Now you start seeing a great proliferation. You've got creative directors from large fashion houses joining the hospitality industry to understand how you drive that. Pascal's, driving that agenda in his own way. And I think there are some great opportunities with regards to learning how cultural components actually need to be fed into hospitality, because as much as hospitality is universal, which means good human values, great make hotel values, right? At the end of the day, generosity, light, space, all of those things, intuitive, service, personalization. These are sort of the reasons to be in business. They're not reasons to win business, right? So I think understanding how do you cut through that, you have to have, in my opinion, a very good knowledge of the cultural nuances of a place. Hospitality is a local business. It's not a global business alone.
Yeah. No, thank you so much. And would you be able to share one of your recent projects or a project that you're very fond of that kind of helped to elevate that human experience?
That's a bit like asking me to choose which one of my children is my favorite.
Yeah. But one of the ones that more had like...
From my experience, I have an allergy with the word luxury, wellness, and things like that today, where these words have been diluted and misused. But there are few outposts of authenticity in the world who have stuck to their North Star, their purpose. And one that I'm very proud of, because we've worked very extensively with them, is a brand called Soneva. Mm-hmm. Soneva Fushi, this is Sonu Shivdasani. He's the founder of Six Senses. And once he sold Six Senses, he stayed true to his sustainability narrative. And looking at that from your impact on the planet, from a sustainability point of view, their CSR and social responsibility initiatives, I think Soneva, for me, always cuts through at the top as a brand that has remained true to its purpose instead of being assigned as a badge to everything else. They do unique things. At Soneva, you have, wellness is at the heart of everything they do, and then besides wellness is sustainability. So they started a couple of very interesting initiatives, which we have played a role in. But one is in Maldives. They collect all the empty glass bottles from all the resorts, whether they're wine bottles and whatever else, and they actually have a glass blowing facility where they fly in artists from the US, glass blowing artists, and they create recycled glass art, which is then sold to charity, and the money that's generated is used for sustainability. that's also a great example of inclusiveness from the guest experience, because you can yourself go and have a class to learn how to blow glass and contribute in creating something that will eventually create positive impact while you're there. Similarly, not many people know that in Maldives, a lot of the Maldivian children actually don't know how to swim because they don't have access to swimming pools. They have access to the sea. So what Sinha did quite interestingly is started a swimming program for Maldivian children in their resorts, allowing children to learn swimming in safe conditions. So when you look at things like these, little initiatives at a local level, I think they give you examples of how you can do heartfelt, meaningful things as a hotel operator or as a brand operator. And for me, these things really scream out as testament of how genuine hospitality needs to be delivered.
Yeah, I really like that. Thank you so much for sharing. So I think one of the other questions is going to go to Pascal, that has all these different hotel brands under one group. How do you lead and craft a diverse, inclusive brand, but what makes each brand so unique? And I think we had a slight discussion about this yesterday as well, and I really liked the way you explained it, so I just wanted to share that with the audience.
Yes, with pleasure. Each brand has its own DNA, and it's really important to be authentic and close to this DNA. But on the other hand, we have to adapt to the location of the hotel. We can't be like the old standardized brands we had before that were like islands on an ocean. Wherever you were, you had the same bed, you had the same restaurant, you had the same areas, you had the same atmosphere. If you were in, I don't know, in Saudi Arabia or in Europe. Now people in our hotels, they want to live the city. They want to, at the same time, the same place, they want to enjoy, rest, meet people, have fun, work, and they want to meet and connect at the same place. So we have to open wide the doors of the hotels to the neighborhood, to the people working around, you see. So when it comes to Maison L, for example, the point is that a magazine like Elle is a whole ecosystem of journalists, announcers, fashion designers, social media influencers, and for them it's very natural to meet in a Maison L. It's much more legitimate to welcome these people instead of a big international brand, such as Hilton, or I don't know which one. So we organized events in Maison L, for example, announcers launching products. They come into our hotels. We worked with local artists too, and specifically women who design jewels or who design candles or whatever. And it fits perfectly to the DNA of our brand and specifically to the place where we're located.
Okay, thank you so much. So my next question is to Gaurav, and this is something that Cordes would just explain to us, the importance of cultural content or cultural experiences, and how you formulate that. But then how do you understand your target audiences and your audiences that you want to develop your experiences from? How do you best study them? How do you put them together? How do you use that information and that data to decide on your marketing strategies, on the human experiences, on everything across that you do for your brands?
You know, thank you for that question. I think a lot of it depends on the specificity of what we are trying to solve for. But you know, we conduct extensive research, qualitative research, collaborative workshops with you know, key stakeholders, understanding how human needs are evolving, what are the cultural nuances you need to be mindful of. You know, an interesting thing, my team has been in Japan for the last 4 or 5 months trying to understand what Japanese people think about Saudi Arabia. Mm-hmm. You know, and it was a fascinating series of like interventions. We had workshops, we did focus groups, we did, you know, qualitative research, questionnaires, etc. And it's fascinating to understand how the cultural paradigms that need to be currently conceived and seen, and how do you cater and address those components. So you learn a lot by just asking honest questions. I think it's also about having meaningful conversations. When it comes to hospitality propositions, we've got to appreciate that there is, some things are constant. You know, certain things are constant requirements. You talk about a functional level, a comfortable bed, light and space, things that define luxury, personalization. All of those things are sort of expected. but how do you speak to people in their native language, understanding their native needs? And I think there is a great requirement for hotel operators to speak to people in their language in that context. So in Saudi Arabia, when we were in Japan, we learned that, a large percentage, nearly 60% of the respondents did not associate Saudi Arabia with the sea. They did not know that we had the Red Sea coastline. There was great intrigue amongst Japanese diaspora to learn more about Saudi food. They were more inquisitive to know how do people eat daily food. So these little things you start picking up, that the culinary culture of a destination, the association with nature, the values that they have, and when you look at Saudi and Japan, in first breath they look like two very different civilizations. But then you start looking at common denominators, whether it's the abaya and the kimono, whether it's calligraphy, whether it's poetry, whether it's fashion, whether it's food, whether it's tea or coffee ceremonies, whether it's kings and emperors, emphasis on rituals. Then you start suddenly realizing what looked like a very different, civilization or very different culture actually has extremely common values and shared beliefs. In the same way, understanding from an operations perspective how to have cultural nuances, if you know how we witnessed the tsunami of Chinese outbound tourism, that became mainstream in the last 10, 15 years, we've also realized how hoteliers had to adapt to that, whether it was the breakfast buffet, whether it was the Chinese-speaking staff that you need to have, when the same thing happened with the Russians, etc. So I think understanding nuances is very important, but I think a lot of it comes from research. It's and looking over the fence. Sometimes, hoteliers learn, in my opinion, a lot more by looking at emerging trends happening in F&B, fashion, art and culture, architecture. These are the sort of things that that create opportunities of innovation.
Yes, thank you so much. And just going back a little bit now when we're still on topic of marketing, just wanted to get, how did you identify your 3 brand pillars for Maison L? What were the main 3 brand pillars that you created for it? Because what I think is so interesting with Maison L, because essentially, like you said, it's an international brand, but you've converted it into another service, another offering. So what brand pillars did you contain with the brand?
Yes, well, once the job is done, it seems to be obvious, and you say, of course, it's Maison L, you recognize the L atmosphere. But before you do it, it's not that easy. So our first step was to clearly understand what was the L magazine DNA. So I made a huge research about the magazine history, and I turned out 3 big trends that gave me the 3 pillars that I used for building Maison L. First one was about Parisian lifestyle and chic. The second one was about well-being. And the third one was what I can call woman curation, woman selection. I mean, selection products for women. So the first pillar was Parisian lifestyle. And we used the woman Parisian wardrobe as fil rouge in the decoration of our rooms, you see. So we used the timeless codes of the Parisian couturier to design the interior of our house. Also, as I told you, I paid a lot of attention at meeting women expectation in small details such as security. For example, when the doors of the hotels are not the glass doors, it's wood panels doors, just to make you feel secure when you're inside the hotel. You see, we pay attention to the lights on the mirror for the makeup. We pay attention to the hair dryer. It's small things that make women comfortable in that place. And that gave a very special, homey style, very Parisian, very cozy. And I had a big recognition when a former UK editor of L came into the hotel and said, "Oh, well, that's really the L hotel." And I was pretty proud of it. So that's the first one, the design and the style. The second one, with the wellness, of course, L magazine spoke a lot about the beauty, the body for women. So we developed a program of spa. We have made a big works with announcers of the magazine, and also we have a big, I would say, love story with yoga. and you have a lot of yoga programs, and we develop specific programs of yoga that you can have in your room on TV, and you can practice on your bed. So it's a bit strange. And the third pillar is what we call women's selection or curation. It's just like when you read the magazine. The magazine tells you where to go to have a good dinner, what the right location to make shopping. So we made a city guide called Fresh Cities by Maison L, and we are very legitimate to tell our customers where to go, much more than other brands, because we are L and we have this legitimacy. And we work with the magazine in every country and every city. For example, when we were in Amsterdam, we were in contact with the Elle magazine in Amsterdam, and we asked them, well, we're going to make the Fresh City edition for Amsterdam. Where are the right place to go? And they know this by heart because it's their work, you see. Also, we organize the events, just as I told you, so I won't tell you about it anymore. And the last thing is the concept store. So just like we do in the magazine, we select things to be bought by women, and they can bring back home, and we develop our own line of products, of t-shirts, candles, yoga mat, and so on. It's been a quite exciting adventure. It's doing pretty well so far.
Perfect, thank you so much. So we're up to our last question now, and it's going to go to Gaurav. And it's just in going back to something that you mentioned was quite interesting when you talked about being authentic and innovative. And what is the key to resonate that with guests and staying ahead of the curve? So my question to you is, in anticipating in this kind of evolving guest preferences is paramount. So how do you, as a brand or a hospitality brand, really personalize the guest experience, but also the targeting marketing narrative that you want to give out to individuals and your target audiences?
You know, that's a really good question, and I don't think there's one specific answer to that question. I think if you would look at the current state of the hospitality industry, I think great innovation is happening. This is a great time of optimism when you look at new brands entering the market, when you look at innovations, whether it's Pascal driving it on a boutique level, feminine level, all of these things. And whether you look at some of the innovations coming out of even the larger groups, whether it's Accor with Ennismore and whatever else they're innovating, they're taking assets and repurposing them. So I think there's some great meaningful things happening. But I think where there is a true opportunity of intervention now with AI and everything else that's happening is with loyalty programs. I think currently, you know, I would like to think, or my protagonistic perspective is that loyalty in hospitality is a one-way street. It's not a two-way street. And in order to make it more intuitive, I think AI now with technology gives you a great opportunity to look at hyper-personalization, really addressing that. So the challenge for the hotel industry now is to figure out what is potentially, you know, I call it right now robophobic. Right? There's robophobic is this fear of algorithms, you know, like the people get dehumanized because the interaction will take the human being at the other end out of the equation. But I think how can we take what is dehumanizing to humanize hospitality? I think that is the exam question for 2024.
Yeah.
You know, how do you take AI, personalization, loyalty programs, and how do you come out of your walled garden? All loyalty programs are walled gardens. They don't really have any connections or deeper connections with other gardens. So I look at multi-brand, omni-channel loyalty programs which understand the nuances. So the person buying a Giving Movement hoodie, how does that person engage at a culinary proposition in a hotel? I think that connection has not been drawn and stitched together in more meaningful ways. So I think this is a great opportunity with AI and loyalty programs creating new interventions and new currencies of goodwill and retention.
Oh, that's great. Yes, fantastic. So I think this kind of comes up to the end of our session. I think there's, if anyone has any questions maybe based on what we've discussed today, please feel free to let us know. If not, if you guys wanted to share anything else before we wrap up the session.
No, thank you.
No, thank you guys.
Thank you for hosting.
Thank you.
Thank you.